Hello, friends. We got some Minnesota Vikings roster moves to break down, not just including Everson Griffen. That one went down earlier, and the Vikings have made the rest of their moves in order to get down to the 80-man roster with that deadline coming on Tuesday. Wasn't just cuts, however, for Minnesota. Outside of signing Everson Griffen, they've also brought in a new running back. Ito Smith has been added to the roster, at least for the time being. Now, Smith has plenty of NFL experience. A former early day 3 pick by the Atlanta Falcons, was cut earlier, now has latched on to Minnesota, where he does still face a pretty uphill battle to make the roster, specifically the active roster. Of course, Dalvin Cook, Alexander Mattison. I'll throw in fullback CJ Ham as well, because fullbacks exist still. Those guys are going to make your 53-man roster. If healthy, which I don't know just how healthy fourth-round rookie Kene Nwangwu at Iowa State will end up being this year, he probably makes the team. So maybe Minnesota carries 4 backs. If that's the case, Amir Abdullah versus Ito Smith. Remember, the practice squad rules have changed starting last year. Veterans can now find their way onto it. Maybe Ito Smith makes the practice squad for Minnesota. Tight time frame for Smith here with the final 53-man roster cuts coming next Tuesday. But will he make the roster? Make your predictions for me right now in the comment section. Y for yes, he will. N for no, he will not. The Vikings had a glut of options at the defensive end positions with the addition of Everson Griffen, and now they've made a move to help get down a little bit. They have added Janarius Robinson to IR. Now, that will end his season officially. This is what we call a roster stash move. Robinson was going to fight for a roster spot, make no mistake about it, but by placing him on IR, the Vikings buy time. He gets to still be around the team and the facility, all that good stuff. Still gets paid, of course, and now can make a full push for a roster spot next year. So Danielle Hunter, Everson Griffen, I assume Stephen Weatherly, Jalen Holmes, Patrick Jones, maybe DJ Wonham end up being your 6 at defensive end, and you IR stash Robinson for a year, who wasn't going to play once you brought in Everson Griffen anyway. So how many sacks, speaking of Griffen, do you think he'll have this season? Make your predictions for me in the comments section. Of course, we broke down the Everson Griffen signing earlier, so check out that video, but get your votes in. How many sacks for Griffen this year? Now time for some cuts, and we'll go kind of a little bit more rapid fire since these guys aren't the biggest names out there. Christian Elliss, the linebacker out of Idaho, he has been released by Minnesota, a UDFA this past year. With the way the roster cut-down timing is working this year from 80 to 53, I assume that most of the guys who are cut today are not going to make the practice squad. Maybe Elliss ends up being an exception, but I kind of doubt it from that perspective. Next up, a bit more of a no-name, Danny Etling, who the Vikings had brought in when the quarterback room had all of their COVID issues because they weren't vaxxed. Etling has spent time with the Patriots, with the Seahawks, now gets released. He's a good athlete. He was never a true NFL rosterable quarterback. His release, since he didn't play at all in the last game, isn't a huge surprise. The Vikings are now down to 4 quarterbacks. Kirk Cousins, Kellen Mond, Jake Browning, and Nate Finley, who also did not play, at least didn't throw a pass, against the Broncos. So kind of think those top 3 are going to be the 3 for Minnesota this season. Some more moves. Jordon Scott, the rookie UDFA out of Oregon. He has been waived/injured. I put on IR to make it just a little bit shorter, because once and if Scott clears waivers, he will revert to injured reserve, just like some of the other Vikings players have done. Riley Patterson, Blake Prohl, etc. This is a kind of a way to stash Scott, who could have made the practice squad potentially. Now, if he clears waivers and there's no injury settlement, his season will be over. He will revert to IR, and he can fight for a roster spot again next year. These next 2 moves, I'll make note, were actually made on Sunday, beginning with Warren Jackson, the wide receiver out of Colorado State. Probably shouldn't have opted out like he did in the 2020 campaign with Colorado State. He always had a very difficult path to actually end up making the 53-man roster. That was going to be a tough path at best there for Minnesota. Adam Thielen is wide receiver 1. Wide receiver 2 is Justin Jefferson. D.D. Westbrook is wide receiver 3. Chad Beebe is wide receiver 4, I guess. Maybe KJ Osborne, Amir Smith-Marset ends up making the team from that perspective. I don't think other guys, Wap Filer, Dan Chisnia, Myron Mitchell, end up making it in the end. Out for the year, by the way, B.C. Johnson and Blake Prohl, both of those players have been placed on IR. So the wide receiver room starting to take shape here for Minnesota. Dylan Mabin, also cut by the Vikings. Again, that was a Sunday move. The corner who was never going to make the team ends up getting released. I wonder if he latches on anywhere right now across the NFL. It does seem just a little bit unlikely. So of the major roster moves, which one surprised you guys the most? And maybe there is one. Heck, maybe there isn't one. Get your votes in for me in the comment section. None is an acceptable answer. Finally, the other official roster move was linebacker Cameron Smith was replaced on the retirement list. He had retired last week, hadn't been made official. Now it is, and now the Vikings are at and under the 80-man roster limit.